backup and restores. The backup capabilities of Windows Vista have changed somewhat since what was available with Windows XP, and in all honesty, it's a rather mixed bag since Windows Backup, at least in my opinion, is the old faithful backup program that simply seems to work when other industrial strength backup programs often fail. In this version of Windows Backup, we now have the ability to back up to a VHD file, which, if you already didn't know, is a virtual hard disk file which can be mounted as a regular hard disk on Microsoft Virtual Server. And that's fantastic news, since now, if you have a backup and your PC suddenly dies, you can quickly fire up a virtual machine and restore your data to it and be back up and running in no time flat. But it's not all good news though. There are some issues that I personally have with this version, but we'll get to those in good time. So in this video, we'll cover how to use the Windows Backup program. We'll also cover how to use the System Restore feature of Windows that enables you to roll back changes that you might have made to your computer, and then we'll look at the Shadow Copy feature of Vista, which allows you to restore your own previous versions of files and folders without having to go and fetch them from a backup. Okay, so to fire up the backup program, there's a few ways we can do this. We can click on Start, and we'll launch the control panel, and we can choose Backup Your Computer, and this will open up the Backup and Restore Center, where, as the name suggests, we can back up and restore our data. Now we could also click on Start and choose All Programs, Accessories, System Tools, and then choose Backup Status and Configuration. And we could also click on Start and simply type in Backup, and then both options will appear at the top here, and you can choose whichever one you'd prefer to use. Now at the end of the day, even though these both do the same thing, it's just the opening screen here that looks different, so choose the one that you prefer. Now personally, I prefer to use the Backup Status and Configuration, so we'll choose that. Okay, well the default here is set to backup files, but we can restore files and perform a complete PC backup. So by default, the only option I have here is to perform an automatic backup, which will back up files and folders on my hard drive and then on a schedule of my own choosing. And then using that schedule, it's going to automatically again back up the same files if they've changed, or any new files and folders that have been added to my computer. Okay, so here's my first issue with the new backup program. Let's choose our only option here to run with an automatic file backup. So we'll need to click Continue here in our user account control message, and the backup program will check my system for backup devices and places that I can store my backup. So what suitable devices did it find? Well, none. It didn't actually find a hard disk, since Vista won't allow you to back up to the same hard disk, presumably since if I do indeed save my backup on the same drive as my files, and if the drive goes bang, I not only lose my operating system and files, but of course I'm going to lose my backup. And that's logical, and people should be aware of that possibility, but still, since I don't actually have a CD or DVD writer attached to that computer, that option is out as well. My CD here is just a regular CD-ROM. And by the way, if you do have a CD or DVD writer and your backup is bigger than a single disk, then you will simply be prompted for another disk, so just keep feeding them in as required. Alright, but what about our second option here? What about a network? Sure, I could back up to another file share somewhere, but don't forget Vista is a client operating system, and a lot of the users are going to be home users with a single hard disk. So you just can't perform a backup. So if I click Cancel, and we'll go to our Complete PC Backup option, we can see here that our computer hasn't been backed up before, so we'll choose to create a backup now. And as before, we'll need to click on our user account control message, and Windows again will start looking for any backup devices we may have attached to this computer. Okay, and as before, our system can't find a second hard disk, and it's not going to be able to find a CD or DVD burner, or a DVD burner preferably, so we can't back up using this method either. So what's a person to do? Well, I'm afraid that if you want to use this inbuilt backup utility, you are going to need a CD or DVD burner, a DVD burner preferably, or a second hard disk. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shut down this computer and I'm going to add in a second drive so we can at least then see how our backup program works. Okay, we're back. I've installed another hard disk in this machine, I've configured it as my D drive, and I've moved my CD-ROM to drive letter E. So again, we'll click on Set up an automatic file backup, and we'll need to click on the user account control message. And again, the backup program will check my system for backup devices and places I can store my backup. Okay, this time, since I have a second hard disk, we've got the first option available, and it's automatically selected my D drive as the location where it will store its backup. Now, if, unlike me, you do happen to have several drives, you'll be able to select the one you prefer from this drop-down list. Alright, well, we'll click Next, and we can choose to back up all of these things here, our pictures, music, videos, email, and so on, as long as these files are on an NTFS formatted disk. And this is my next problem with this backup program. In the effort to make this all really easy for the average consumer, Microsoft have removed the advanced options from the program. Now you can't go and choose which files and folders you want to back up individually, you have to back them all up as a category. So for argument's sake, let's say that I've got 5 gigabytes of videos in my videos folder, but there's only 3 100 meg files that I want to back up. Well, forget it. I can't back up that 300 meg now. In order to back them up, I need to back them all up, which is a complete waste of my time. Alright, so for our backup here, I'm just going to uncheck all of these boxes here, and I'll leave the top one for pictures. But also take note of this message down the bottom here that performing a file backup will not include system files, executable files, and temporary files. This only includes data. So if you want to back up those things, you're going to need to perform a complete PC backup. So what this really means, using our example here of just backing up pictures, is this. And I'll just click on Start and we'll open up Computer for this example. Okay, what this means is, let's say I've got an image stored on the root of my C drive here. Well, our backup is going to back that up. And if I have another image stored, say, in my user trainer folder, then it's also going to back that up. And if I have an image that's, say, sitting in my program files directory, then that'll also get backed up. But if I store an image in the Windows directory, then it will not get backed up, as the Windows directory is a system folder, and anything in that folder will be excluded when you run a file backup like we're doing now. Obviously, Microsoft are trying to get you to save your data in other locations, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but just be aware of it. Okay, well, we'll click Next, and now we can set a schedule for how often we want Windows to scan these folders for files that are new or have changed. Now, if it finds any new files or any changed ones, it's going to automatically back them up as per this schedule. So how often do you want to run this backup? Daily, weekly, monthly? Note that there's no option here to back up just once only, as our backup will run immediately after we complete this wizard anyway. This here is only setting a schedule for any subsequent backups. Okay, so next we'll need to set what day of the week we want to run our backup, and then what time we want it to run. Now take note of this message here. Since this is our first backup, Windows will perform a full backup of all the files we selected, of course, which are the pictures, and it's going to start that backup right now once we click Save at the bottom. So let's do it. We'll click Save Settings and Start Backup, and in the background, Windows will start performing a shadow copy of our system, which will snapshot any data that's currently in use and then start the backup. Okay, and we can see our backup is in progress, and if we want to stop it, we can stop it using this link. Okay, you can see here that our file backup has completed successfully. So if we click on Start, we'll open up our computer here, and I'll go to my D drive, and you can see here that I've got a new folder, which is the host name of my PC here. So if we open this folder, and I will warn you ahead of time that Vista marks these folders so they require elevated privileges to open them. So I'm going to get a lot of user account control messages here the first time we try to navigate through this. So we'll navigate a few folders down, and we'll click Continue, and Continue again, and we'll go into our backup set, Continue, Continue again. Okay, and here you can see our backup is contained within this zip file here. So we'll open it up, and there's our C drive. So we'll go into that directory, and you can see it's performed backups of any picture files that are located inside our program files and users folder, but not the Windows folder like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so we'll go back to our backup program. And if you want to change this backup now to include different types of files, for example, you want to back up videos as well, simply click on Change Backup Settings, and you're going to run through the same wizard as we saw before. Now, as we've just run through that wizard the last time, we configured a schedule for our backup to run, and we can also turn that off if we like. Now, finally, we could also kick off another backup right now if we like by simply clicking on Backup Now, and if there are any new files that need to be backed up, it will drop them inside the same folder on the root of our D drive, and in my case, that was called Vista Client 01, which is my host name, and it's going to place those files in a new folder with today's date and time. Okay, now that we have a backup, we can click on Restore Files, and we've got two options here. We can either perform an advanced restore, which allows us to restore a backup that was made on another PC or for all user profiles on this computer, or we can just restore files from a backup made from this computer. Now note the shield icon next to the advanced restore, which indicates you will need to be an administrator to use this option. So we'll select Restore Files, and we can restore files from the latest backup or an older one. Well, in most cases, you're probably going to want the default option, but of course, there may be times where you'll want to go back and retrieve something from a while ago, so the second option is there if you need it. Well, we'll just leave the default here, and we'll click Next. Okay, now this step here might get a little confusing for some people, but it's really rather simple. You're probably expecting an Explorer-style listing showing all of the files that we've backed up, but instead here, we need to add files or folders to the list that we want to restore. So let's say it's a file we want to restore. If we know the name of the file, we can simply click Search, and then type in the file name. Now this does support wildcards here, so I could simply just enter in an asterisk, although you will be warned that this could take a while, but I'm going to click Search. And we can now see all of the files and folders that we've backed up, and we can simply place a check in the box next to the ones we want to add, or we could just select them all. And if you've made a mistake and you've selected too many, we can of course clear our selections as well. Alright, well, I'm just going to click a couple of images here, and we'll click the Add button, and that'll bring these files into the list of files and folders that we want to restore. Alright, well, we can of course click Add Files or Folders as well, and they're exactly the same, so we'll just choose Files here. And now we're presented with a Windows Explorer style interface where we have to go through and navigate through our backup to see what it is we want to restore. So if I go to my Users folder here and select Public, and then we'll select Pictures, and if we go into our Sample Pictures folder, here you can see the default pictures that come inbuilt with Windows Vista, so I'll select a couple of these files here, and then we'll click Add. And of course, if you realize that you've selected something to restore that you don't actually need, you can simply select it from the list and then choose to remove it or remove all. Alright, so there's the files we want to restore, so we'll click Next. and we can now choose to restore these files to the original location or a different location. Now, if you choose to restore to a different location, you can still choose to restore the files to their original subfolders. So since some of the images that we're restoring now are from the Users, Public, Pictures folder, so if we select this option and then choose to restore them to another drive, say our D drive here, then it'll also create a parent folder called C, and it's going to place those files in that folder. Okay, well, once you've made your selections here, simply click on Start Restore, and that's it. Okay, our restore's done, so we'll click Finish, and we'll go back and we'll rerun this, and we'll accept the default here. And I'm just going to go and add in a couple of files. We'll go back to our Public Pictures folder, and I'm just going to select a few of these. We'll click Add, and we'll click Next. Now this time we'll choose to restore them in the original location, and we'll click Start Restore. And as you can see, if you are restoring files to a location where the file names already exist, you'll be presented with this File Exists dialog box like you do when you perform a regular file copy operation, and then we can either replace the original with the restored one, we can choose not to restore the file, or restore it with a new name. Now I'm just going to choose the top option here and overwrite our current file, but since I'm going to get several of these messages, I'm just going to check this box at the bottom so we won't receive this same message multiple times, and we'll choose Copy and Replace. Okay, and our restore was successful, and it was a pretty easy process to restore our data, as you've just seen. So our final option we have here is to perform a complete PC backup, so we'll click this, and we can see that this system hasn't yet had a complete backup before, so we'll choose to create a backup now. Now, as normal, we will need to click on the user account control message. So again, I'm going to leave the default here at my D drive and click Next. And we're told that our backup could take up to 10 gig of space, and that's fine. But notice something here. It's only going to back up my C drive. So what about any data that I might have on the D drive? Well, sadly, that won't be backed up at all. Now, if I did have a third hard drive here, say an E drive or an F drive, then I could in fact back up my D drive. But then I'm going to run into that same problem with the other drive. But since I'm using it to save my backup itself, backing up D isn't an option. So just be aware of this. Whatever device you wish to back up, you must have another device to back it up to. Backing up to the same device won't work. Alright, so we'll click on Start Backup, and our backup will begin. Now this will take a while, so I'm going to pause the video here, and we'll return once it's complete. Okay, our backup has completed successfully, so now we'll click Close. Alright, now we have a complete backup image of our system, and if we go and click on Start and open up our computer, and then we'll go to our D drive, we've got a new folder here called Windows Image Backup, so let's open it, and we'll click Continue, and then again on the user account control message, we'll go into the host name folder of our PC here, and we'll do the same thing, and then our backup directory of today's date. Alright, well in here we can see we've got a bunch of XML files, and most importantly, there's the backup file itself written as a VHD or virtual hard disk file that we can now mount as a hard disk with Microsoft Virtual Server. Now I will point out ahead of time that this virtual hard disk image isn't bootable though, but we can use this image to either restore our PC or mount it using the VHD mount command that comes with Microsoft Virtual Server, and then browse through it as if it was a regular hard drive. Okay, so let's assume for the sake of the argument that my machine here has just died, so in order to restore our computer completely, we will need to reboot it using the Windows Vista DVD. Okay, I've just rebooted my machine using the Vista DVD, and we're here at the opening screen, so we'll go and click Next, and down the bottom left here we'll choose Repair Your Computer. Alright, well we can see that it's found our previous installation here on our C drive, so we'll go and click Next. And then we'll choose the third option here, the Windows Complete PC Restore. Alright, it's now found our backup here on our D drive, and we could certainly restore that, but if this was truly a brand new system, say we've replaced the whole PC, we could restore all of our data, including the operating system, to a brand new PC as well, which is a rather cool feature. So we'll go and click on Next, and we can see that we're about to restore our computer from the D drive, where our backup's located, to our C drive, and we can even choose to format and repartition our drive to the exact same layout that we had before. So we'll simply click Finish, and we'll get one final confirmation message which we'll have to agree to, and once we do, then our restore will be completed. Now this is probably the finest feature of Windows Vista backups right here, because quite frankly, you don't even really need a third-party program like Norton Ghost anymore, and for those of you who haven't used Ghost, it's a very popular program used to take an image of a brand new Windows PC installation, which you can then use to restore to dozens of PCs, and it makes rolling out new systems much quicker. Now with this image restore function of Vista, you really don't need Ghost, although I'm pretty sure that they'll come out with a new version that offers more features to keep people purchasing their product. Alright, well I'm going to cancel this for now. And while we're here, you can also perform a system restore as well. So let's take a look at that, and clicking this link will start up the system restore wizard. So we'll click Next. Now ever since Windows XP, Windows has used restore points to snapshot a system before you install new software or perform any major system changes, just in case something goes wrong. And these restore points are automatically generated either at a scheduled interval or when you modify your Windows system. Now we can come in here if we're having problems and choose to restore our system back to the way it was before we installed an application, for example. And this is great since it gives us a way of rolling back the change that might have otherwise made our machine inoperable. So we can simply select a restore point from the list here, and you're going to see entries for when you installed applications and so on. And if it's older than 5 days, that you made some sort of change that you think might be the cause of your problems on your machine, then you can check this box and go back further. Now once you've made your selection, simply click Next. Now since the drive my change would have been made on was my system drive, I've got nothing to choose here, but if your change was say an application you installed on another drive, say a D drive, you'd be able to choose that here, then click Next. Alright, all we have to do now is click Finish, and our system will be rolled back to the way it was before we started experiencing problems, which I might add is very handy. Alright, well I'm going to pause the video now and reboot this Vista machine, as we'll move on and I'll show you how to manually create a restore point so you can do it yourself if you know that you're about to install a new application or modify the system. That way you know you have a current snapshot that you can roll back to if you need. Alright, well we're back in our Vista system, so we'll go and click on Start, and we'll right click on Computer and we'll select Properties. Now over here on the left side we'll choose System Protection, and then we'll click Continue. Alright, now to create a new restore point, simply choose the drive that you want the restore point on, and you can see here it defaults to our system drive, and then click Create. Now we can enter in a description, and I'll say before installing Office 2007, and we'll click Create. Now our restore point will be created. So now, once our restore point is created, we can go and install Office 2007, and if we have problems either during or after the installation, we can then roll back to how our system was prior to any changes we made. Alright, and we can see our restore point was created successfully. Now you can choose to restore from a restore point from within Vista as well as booting from the DVD. So if you are having problems but your system is still bootable, you can do it from here. But if it's not bootable at all, then you can boot from the DVD and do it that way. So we'll select the System Restore button and we'll choose Next. And there we can see our manual restore point. So we can choose that, we can click Next, and once we click Finish, our system will be put back the way it was before we went and installed Office 2007. Now there's one final thing I want to talk about before we wrap up this discussion on backups, and that's yet another method of restoring files by using shadow copies. Shadow copies works in conjunction with the system restore points we've just talked about. You see, when you manually or Vista automatically creates a restore point, it also creates a copy, or more accurately, a shadow copy of every file that has changed since the last restore point. Now by default, Vista is only configured to create these restore points, and therefore our shadow copies as well, on our C drive. But if we want to add this feature to cover our D drive or any other drives that we have on our system, this is where we'd do it. Simply check the boxes here and then click OK. But take note though that you can only turn on the System Restore feature if the hard drive is over 1 gig in size, which probably means practically any hard drive nowadays. And also, since disk space isn't infinite in capacity, if you're running out of space, bear in mind that Vista will start overriding the oldest restore points automatically if it needs more space. So if it's something you need to restore from a few days ago, you'll likely find shadow copies will save your backside. But if it's a file you need restored from say 4 months ago, you'll probably find Windows backup will most likely be your savior. Okay, now that we know that shadow copies of files are made with each system restore point that's either automatically or manually created, how do we retrieve files that have either been modified or deleted? Well, that's the easy part. We'll go and click on Start, and we'll open up, say, our Pictures folder, and we'll check out the sample pictures that come included with Vista. Now, if the file still exists on your hard drive, let's say it's this file here, this autumn leaves picture. Let's say I've just modified this picture and I've totally mucked it up, or perhaps I've overwritten it with another file. And it doesn't have to be an image, of course, it could be any file, just as long as it's not a Windows system file. So it could be a Word document that you've just deleted, or perhaps you've removed a column from an important Excel spreadsheet and you need it back. Well, if we right-click on our file and then choose Restore Previous Versions, or we could actually right-click on the file and choose Properties, and then go to the Previous Versions tab. Ultimately, it's the same. In this window, you can see all of the previous versions of this file. Now, in this case, I only have one single copy here, since obviously this file hasn't changed since back in 2006. However, if this was a popular Word document, for example, I could see dozens of previous versions here, which will be updated every time we create a restore point. It's going to add another shadow copy of the file as long as it's changed and hard disk is available. Now, our most recent copy of this file was from a backup I did earlier, and we can see that the location here is backup. So to restore this file, we could simply select it and then click on Restore. And since our file does already exist, I've got the option of overriding it with the old copy. Well, let's cancel this, and I'm going to go here and delete our autumn leaves picture. Okay, well now we can't right-click on the image and choose previous versions since it's gone. So what do we do? Well, we can either right-click anywhere in this folder and choose Properties, or we can right-click on the folder itself and choose Properties, and then the Previous Versions tab. So take your pick, we're all going to arrive at the same place anyway. Alright, now here we have shadow copies of the folder itself. So we can select a shadow copy and choose to open it, and that way we can check what's inside. Now I could also choose my autumn leaves image here, and I'll right click on it and choose Preview. So that way I can check that this is in fact the correct file I want, and yes it is. So now we can simply right click on this image and then choose Copy, and I'll click on Start and we'll go to our Pictures folder again, and then our sample pictures. Our autumn leaves picture here has been deleted, as you can see. So now we'll right click, we'll choose Paste, and there our image is restored. It's back just the way it was before we deleted it. Now of course we don't have to paste it in the same folder, we could paste it anywhere if we like. It doesn't have to go back to the same spot. Alright, now, in case you missed it, we can also copy the entire folder as well here if we like, and then we can choose to copy that folder to a location of our choice. Now finally we can choose to restore the folder, but this option will only restore the entire folder to its original location, and that's going to automatically overwrite any existing files, so just be aware of that if you do choose the restore option. Now the other thing you'll want to be aware of is how much disk space is being consumed by your system restore, and that's going to affect how many previous shadow copies you'll have available. Obviously, the less disk space you have available, the less backups you're going to be able to store. So if we click on Start and we'll type CMD and we'll hold down the Control and Shift keys and hit Enter, and that'll help us open up a command prompt in administrative mode, because there's a command with a few useful switches that you should be aware of. Now the command we want to look at is the VSS admin command, which stands for the Volume Shadow Copy Services admin, and if we just hit Enter at a command prompt here with no arguments, you can see here the available switches. So if we enter in VSS admin followed by list shadows and we hit Enter, you can see here we have a list of all the shadow copies that have been created and the date that the copy was made. Now if we enter back in our VSS admin list and change this command to shadow storage and hit Enter, this command will show you how much space has been allocated to the shadow copy service on each drive that you have and how much is currently used. And if you want to change any of these values, you can do so by issuing our VSS admin command with the resize shadow storage switch. Now I'm going to run this command with no additional arguments, which will get an error, mind you, but it helps because now we've got some examples here that we can use. Okay, so let's rerun our command again, and firstly you will need to tell the command which shadow copy instance you want to change. Now since I only have shadow copies enabled on my C drive, obviously I'll choose that, so we'll type in 4 equals C colon. Now next we'll need to choose where we want our shadow copies to be saved, which could be on a different drive, so I could actually enter the on command and save this to my D drive, and that of course would force our shadow copies to be saved on the D drive, but I'm just going to leave mine from the C drive for now. And finally we can specify a maximum size. We'll allow this to grow by specifying this max size switch. So we'll enter in max size, and I'm going to set this one to say 12 gigabytes. And notice up here in the output you can use these abbreviations here for kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, and so on. So we'll hit Enter, and we can see that our shadow storage size has now been resized. So if we go and run our list shadow storage command again, we can see that the maximum allocated space is now 12 gig. In this video, we've looked at various backup and restore options that you have in Windows Vista. We saw how to use the Windows backup program that comes with Vista, It's a shame that in order to make it easier for people to use, Microsoft took out the ability to choose individual files to back up. Now, quite frankly though, it does the job, it does back up and restore your data, and for complete PC backups, it's great. But power users who want more control over backing up individual files will probably want to look elsewhere. Now that said, the imaging features when you perform a full computer backup are great, and it can not only save your skin if you need to restore your complete PC, but you can also restore it to dozens of other PCs as well if you like, making it a great tool for administrators and those rolling out a number of PCs. We also looked at using the System Restore feature to roll back a Vista system to the way it was before we started experiencing problems. And we showed you how to recover your own files and folders without having to resort to a full or partial restore using a real backup program by taking advantage of shadow copies. And this is great for us system administrators since it allows a regular user to recover their own files without having to go and call us and get the backup tapes out to do a lengthy restore. So with a variety of ways to keep your data safe, it's obvious that Windows Vista really does have you covered.